Hey guys, coach, this is Beanie and we're here to teach you everything you need to know in order to consciously create your desired life experience. This is the fourth video of this little core wound series, and today we're gonna tackle the wound of neglect. By the way, I decided that I want to make a live video about how to heal them because I think it is quite useful if I give you guys the opportunity to ask questions while I'm describing the process of healing. So there will be a live as soon as I'm done with the series. I will make a post in the community tab area thingy, so you will know when it's gonna happen, so you can see if you can join or not. If you can't join, you can leave a comment underneath the post with your question. I will answer it in the live nevertheless, okay? But now let's get into the wound of neglect. So as per usual, how does it feel like? How does it look like to have that wound? And like, what are the indicators essentially? And as per usual, we have a duality. We have two extremes essentially. One would be being hyper independent, and the other would be being super dependent. Hyper independent looks like you feel the need to do everything by yourself. You feel the need to take care of your stuff by yourself. You struggle with asking for help. You struggle with receiving help. You feel a little bit overly protective over the stuff that you're doing for yourself, by yourself. And you are easily triggered when people are criticizing the way you're doing something. As you can see, we have again an overlap here. Wound of abandonment also had the hyper-independency, and the struggling with criticism is also something that overlaps with yesterday's wound of injustice, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I do. But this time when it comes to criticism, it's more like you feel personally attacked by it. The flip side would be being dependent, and this is honestly the majority of people that I've been working with and what I've seen in my life, whether it be my personal or my professional life so far. People usually are more likely to fall in the second category of being a little bit too dependent on other people. And that shows by being mostly overwhelmed. Now, being overwhelmed with situations is an indicator, like, and I'm talking constantly overwhelmed, like with little shit situations in your life. It is an indicator for both extremes. However, the first one has kind of become high functioning on that. So the first type, the first extreme of being super independent, even though they are constantly overwhelmed with even little shit situations, they still function properly. They still know what to do. It is just a very stressful thing. The other side, the dependent people, they feel like a child. They feel disempowered. They feel like they can't do anything. They feel they have often developed this idea that life happens to them and they can't do shit. So things that they are saying or thinking often is, this is too much. I can't do it. I don't know how. I need help. Somebody else please needs to take care of this. So it's the opposite of the wound of rejection, where we had this, it's not enough, I am not enough. It's still the feeling of not being capable enough, but it's more projected towards the outside world. Like the focus lies more on the outside circumstances, and you feel like what happens to you is too much for you to comprehend. It's too much for you to deal with it. What else do we have? The hyper-independent people feel like they have to carry the world, and even though they struggle doing that and it hurts them and it's not beneficial and they're constantly stressed and overwhelmed, they kind of have this tremendous sense of great responsibility over everything, not just over themselves and their lives, but they are carrying shit from other people. Those are the ones that will come in and do tasks for you. So if you are a person that when you are telling a friend or a co-worker or a family member, whoever, you tell them how to do something and then you get that urge to do it yourself, or you may be not even capable of telling them how to do it, you're just taking the task away from them and you do it yourself. This is, by the way, also how you re-inflict this wound onto other people. The dependent kind of people, they are helpless. They stand in situations which are not that big of a deal. They stand there and they're like, I don't know what to do. And it can be in important situations as well as like super stupid situations. My mother has that wound, by the way, and she showed up in the past as the dependent kind of person. And there were situations where even opening a bottle of like soda and it started like spraying all over the place, she was just incapable to act quickly. She held that bottle. It was actually quite hilarious, but it tells a lot, right? She held that bottle, like I have a bottle here. She held that bottle, she unscrewed it, and everything was like coming out. The entire content of the bottle was just like all over the place, and she looked at me with the most helpless look on her face ever. She was like, what? I don't know what to do. And I took the bottle and I screwed it back on. I was like, seriously, mom? Like, what the fuck? So even in little, seemingly unimportant situations, this can show its ugly head, right? So you gotta be a little bit, always, you gotta be super honest with yourself, and you gotta be open to really investigate your life and really investigate your reactions and also other people's reactions. Another thing is that those people often have the desire to have a very wealthy life with a lot of luxury, but they are not necessarily willing to create it for themselves. Those people also have strongly codependent relationships, like love relationships, and a lot of times what happens I'm going to start with the hyper independent part. They choose partners that need their help. They choose partners where they can be the provider, they have more income, they have like a more successful career, they are like not just fulfilling the role of the partner, but also easily fulfilling the role of the teacher, the role of the father, the mother, whatever, anything along those lines of being in charge and being a guide to your partner, which you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to be boyfriend or husband or girlfriend or wife or whatever, and that's it, right? But those people have the tendency to take on these roles because they kind of want to compensate their feelings of being neglected in the past by then being a little bit overbearing and also being in control, and they just have this need and this idea that if I do it, it's gonna be better. There's this idea that nobody else can live up to their standard because they are quite frankly not used to anybody living up to any freaking standard from their childhood. So the dependent part here, like the other extreme, the people who need help, who are needy, so to speak, they usually get attracted to people who are high in status, they have a lot of money, they have accomplished more than themselves, they have a better career than themselves. And usually those people are also attracted to people who are significantly older than themselves. So those are indicators. Doesn't mean that if you have a relationship and your partner is 10, 15 years older than you, that you necessarily have that wound, but it's just something to look out for, right? With these people, there also comes a certain sense of laziness. It sounds a little bit contradicting when it comes to the extreme of being hyper independent, But those hyper-independent people have not necessarily acquired the skills to actually carry their stuff, to actually take control and take charge. So what happens here is there is this strong desire to do everything by themselves and be the provider for other people, but they don't really know how, because nobody taught them. Nobody lived that way. They never had a role model where they could look up to and learn these kind of things. So there's a very big potential of failure, and this then shows up, because we don't want to experience failure, this then shows up in the form of laziness, where you know you could give more, you know you're not giving 100%, you kind of fake yourself into believing that you give 200% because you're carrying so much from the other person or the other people around you, or such a huge part of the project if you're working on a team or something like that. But in all reality, you're not giving 100%, and you have a tendency to be lazy, to try, like, it's easier for you guys to invest in ways of making things less hard and easier and lazier, and it's harder for you to actually just do the work. So a lot of people that are constantly looking for shortcuts and magic spells and quick fixes, watch out for this one, okay? The laziness in the dependent part is like the little, like I call them princesses, you know? Those entitled little brats. They are not happy with themselves. They don't feel good about themselves. They are constantly feeling like they are incapable of doing things by themselves. They want to, but they feel like they can't really, because again, they have not learned that. They don't have acquired the skills necessary to actually do that. And then they start becoming entitled, and then they start leaning back, and then they start letting other people work for them. Another indicator is that when you go back to your family, or when you start hanging out with friends from high school or even earlier school days, you fall back into your old kind of behavior, and that goes for both extremes. So you can be totally on top of your game, and then you go visit your, I don't know, your uncle, and all of a sudden you react like you did in your teenage years. And it is like a symbiotic kind of dynamic, because those family members are still treating you like a teenager or like a child. In general, the hyper-independent person can come off to others as arrogant, as selfish, as full of themselves. So if you heard that a lot about yourself, if you have experienced a lot of situations where it seemed like other people are jealous of you, or they don't want you to succeed, and they tell you that you are an arrogant bitch or you're too full of yourself, whatever, then this could be an indicator. On the flip side, the other extreme of the dependent person, they come off as childlike, they come off as super innocent, helpless, kind of cutesy, you know, but also to a point where it's just annoying, because you feel like you are literally talking to a child. So if you heard a lot of criticism in terms of why can't you do it by yourself, or grow the fuck up, or heard a lot of people telling you, oh, I'm gonna do this for you, oh, don't worry, just lean back, now I'm gonna take care of this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. People trying to prevent you from having to face certain tasks or certain situations or circumstances in your life, then that can also be an indicator. Now let's talk about where this is coming from. I already mentioned a little hint there. Having overbearing parents, family members that did just not allow you to be your own person. This is like a little bit of a secondary wound situation, because if you have overbearing parents, then most likely they have been neglected. Now, just because somebody in your family is overbearing and keeps you in this like golden cage, kinda, keeps you safe and takes care of you and does everything for you, does not mean that they are not neglecting certain aspects of you. So this is still part of the wound of neglect, but in most cases when it comes to that, it's when it comes to that specific example of having overbearing family members, parents, whatever, usually it's a secondary inflicted wound. So you are not the first one to deal with that, and you've not necessarily experienced true neglect in terms of having to fight for yourself, being alone, having to make your own dinner, going to school alone, dressing yourself alone in the morning at the age of 4 or 5, or whenever you start going to school. 6? I forgot. Who cares? This example that I just mentioned, that would be direct true neglect. And this can happen when you have parents that are alcoholic, that are drug abusers. They have some issues, they have psychological issues, they have some illnesses, they struggle in their lives. They are constantly out partying. They have themselves not accepted their role as a parent yet. Peter Pan syndrome is also part of that. So if you have been neglected, like if you have experienced true neglect, it's most likely that you had to take care of yourself from a very young age on, where you were actually not capable to fully take care of yourself. Another indicator that comes from that is a sense of shame about who you are and what you are capable of doing and your skill set. This explains why those people are hypersensitive to criticism. Like hypersensitive, but again, not in terms of they will take this with them and then sit and then contemplate it, but in terms of they will lash out. They will not accept it, or they will cry. They will have a strong emotional reaction, because you have to see it from this perspective. Imagine you are a child and you have been neglected and you needed to take care of yourself, but you are just physically, emotionally incapable of doing that, and you're trying to do your best while you are aware of the fact that you are not supposed to do this by yourself. You're supposed to rely on your parents. Your parents are supposed to be there to parent you, but they are not. So you are trying your best, knowing it is not as good as what other people can accomplish with the help of their parents. So you start becoming very defensive over the things that you did achieve, because there's a certain pride here where you can say, yeah, I had to do all of this by myself. Yeah, I was by myself, on my own. I had to take care of everything. A lot of times this also happens when you have siblings that you need to take care of, and you somehow become all of a sudden the new man of the house or the new woman of the house. And all of a sudden, because your mother, your father, your guardians, whoever is incapable of taking care and fulfilling their parental duties, the role falls onto you. So you try your best, you develop a sense of pride for what you're capable of doing, especially when you grow up and when you're older, and you get very defensive over this because you did try your best. So when then somebody comes and criticizes you, you will react a little bit explosively. Also, another indicator is avoidant behavior when confronted. It goes hand in hand with a problem with a sensitivity to criticism. So these are the two main things. A lot of times when you have the first thing that I mentioned, or something along these lines, where your family just did not allow you to be your own person, where they constantly treated you as a child, as incapable. They constantly kept you safe from all of the dangers outside, where they are constantly, even when you grew older, even when you were in your 20s, or even as an adult person, where they are constantly questioning your abilities and constantly keeping things hidden from you because they doubt that you are capable of dealing with it, essentially. In those cases, what can happen is also a very reactive mode, that you just freak out and you start behaving like a true brat. Like you start triggering people on purpose out of sheer frustration. Neglect can come in different shapes and different colors. Again, we have cultural aspects here, we have religious aspects here, we have a lot of things that are coming together, but essentially these are like the main indicators and the two main reasons that I have personally experienced, even though I am very aware of other reasons for neglect. However, I have not dealt with them in my personal / professional life yet. This is as much as I can give you, essentially. So that's it for the wound of neglect. I hope that helped, and see you tomorrow with the wound of, what's the next one? Oh, humiliation. Beautiful. Yeah, that's also a good one. So see you tomorrow, and love you all, and bye.